It's great to have a fan club, I tell you. So I have a question for you. And it's also great that we have new associates here. Have you ever had a job where there's a set of instructions for everything? Yes, at Capital Group, we call them job aids, and we do have plenty of them. In fact, there's one software application I use quite often, SharePoint. It has 36 tip sheets and demo videos. Did you know that? And I still have a tough time with that one. I do. But do you know what the toughest job I've ever had is? The toughest job, I found out that I've had a daughter for 27 years, and I just met her 2 years ago. How do you be a dad to a kid you have never known? There's no job aid for that. I looked. So let me tell you the story. In 1988, all right, so let's go back, 1988, I was one of the few, the proud, I was a United States Marine. In fact, I was a Marine musician. That's me on the right. I was tall, I was thin, I had short hair, much like today where I'm still tall and I still have short hair. Those were good times. But back in 1988, two things happened that changed my life forever. The first, I received orders to deploy. Now, Marines deploy all the time, is what we do. But this was a 1-year deployment, and I had only been married a year and a half at the most. My wife was not happy. I was not thrilled. The second thing that happened, we learned my wife was pregnant. Great timing, right? We did the math. I would miss the birth and the first 8 months of my child's life, and there was nothing I could do about it. My wife was beside herself. She was angry. I was probably in shock. I really didn't know what to think. I was numb. I just knew it would be a long year without my wife. But the year passed, and we were eventually reunited, and I got to meet my daughter, Nora, for the first time. Those of you who have had kids, you know that when they're a toddler, they like to move. Nora never stopped moving. She was always on the go. As she developed her language skills, she never stopped talking. She was always asking why not? She was a handful, but in a good way. She was an early reader. She loved books. We could not get enough books. A couple years into it, Nora becomes a big sister. Emma Catherine comes along, and she's not quite as outgoing as Nora, but she's just as smart. And we think, our family is complete. The kids start to grow up. They go to elementary school, middle school, high school. And like all families, we have our ups and downs. Grades were good. That was an up. Parent-teacher conferences were not always so good. The first one, though, was kind of unusual. Nora had faced down a bully using just words. No fighting. That was a great conference. I'm like, why are people worried about these parent-teacher conferences? These are great. Not more than a month later, Nora gets into literally a shouting match with her third grade teacher over the poor quality of the reading books in the classroom. And I looked, they were very bad. But that was not a good conference. It wasn't. And I will spare you the details on how she earned detention in Japanese class by speaking Japanese. So even in high school, Nora was a handful, but in a good way. However, towards the end of high school, we noticed a change in her attitude. And this is beyond the typical teenage attitude that a lot of people experience. We were concerned enough that we decided it was time to seek professional help. So Nora saw a counselor for about 2 years, and things did help. In fact, when she graduated high school and went to college, the counselor said, Nora is cured. Now, we don't know what she was cured of, but we liked the word cured. Life was good. About halfway through the sophomore year, we noticed another change. The counselor may have missed something. Minor problems with alcohol escalated. Behavior started to spiral downward. If left unchecked, it could possibly become self-destructive. And that's when we received the phone call, about 2 a.m. It's one of those phone calls no parent ever wants to receive. Nora was not dead, but Nora was in bad shape. Her friends had taken her to the hospital and left her there. By the time my wife and I got there, we found her sitting alone in the waiting room of the emergency department. She was barely coherent. She was scared and she was worried. She wasn't worried about what she had done to get there. She was worried about what would happen after, what would come next. She knew that if the doctors saw her, test results could get back to the university and she could be expelled. There goes any chance for a good career. So now our problem has compounded. Do we stay? Do we go? By this time, I am a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps, a gunny, and if this had been a Marine, this problem would have been so easy to solve. I would have had that Marine sitting at attention, waiting for the doctor, and they would accept whatever came their way because Marines are, if anything, accountable for their actions. But this was not a Marine. This was our kid. Do we stay? Do we go? What would you do? I'll tell you what we did. We helped Nora up. We walked out to the car, and we drove home. We put Nora in her own bed, and we watched as her body detoxed for 3 days, and I hope you never have a job aid that teaches you how to do that. Thankfully, a few days after that, she's starting to recover. She's almost her old self, and she has what I call an epiphany. She realizes something needs to change in her life. The first thing, college. Nora transfers to a new college, one where she could more fully develop her interest in computer science. She also needs something to do more productive with her spare time. She's always been a good artist, painting, sketching, but she throws herself into it. Here's a few examples of her work. She had been good, and now she was great. She starts taking up bike riding again for physical fitness and fun. We help her take a few classes at the Chrysler Museum of Art in glassblowing. What was good became great. Now it is amazing. Nora is back on track. Nora shares an apartment with her best friend now, and they invite us over for dinner. She has a good job. She can afford dinner. We didn't complain. In fact, she works at NASA, at Langley. She works in the field of climate science. Nora wants to help save the world, and if anybody can do that, she can. We are so proud of her accomplishments, I tell you. And now she's cooking dinner. black bean burgers and sweet potato fries, if you need to know. My wife and I were vegetarians. We love it, and we didn't have to cook, so what could go wrong? It was a great night, full of laughter, fun, storytelling. And at the end, Nora stands up. She says she has a very important announcement to make. Let's stop for just 1 second. We'll come back. There's something you need to know. Let's go back to 1988, 1989, before I left on that deployment. The doctors told us every test indicated we would have a healthy baby girl. Every test. We picked out some names. This was the first grandchild on either side of the family. Relatives bought stuff that a little girl would like in the nursery. August of 1989, the baby arrives, and by physical characteristics, it's a boy. We have to find a new name. Relatives have to buy new stuff. We raise that child as a son. We go camping, we go fishing, we go to NASCAR races. A tux is rented for senior prom. And now we're finding out from the time that child was born up until this very moment at this dinner, we thought we had a son, but now we are learning the entire time she knew she was a woman. The doctors were right, the body was wrong. There was an awkward silence in the room. My wife stands up and walks across. She's crying. She comes to Nora and gives her a hug and says, "I love you." Now everyone is looking at me. Now I'm a retired Marine Master Sergeant at this point. I'm also the product of two parents, very, very conservative parents. They never showed a public display of affection where anybody could see it because it wasn't proper. My parents never said "I love you" out loud because, as it was explained to me, it's just assumed. I had very little frame of reference. That's a true statement. So what do? My first thought is not about Nora. My first thought's about me. I have to go back to work on Monday. What am I going to tell the people at work, the people that know I've got 2 kids, 1 each? Capital Group was not exactly a friendly, open environment for these types of discussions. And I can tell you how I know that. At this point, I'd been with the company about 7, 8 years. My first year at Capital, I was working in AFD. An associate across the desk from me had just gotten off a call with a broker. She hung up the phone. She looked at me and she said, "That guy's about as gay as they get. You could hear it in his voice. You know what I mean, right, Doug?" I was shocked. This was Capital Group. We weren't supposed to hear that or say that. And yes, I knew what she meant. She meant she was intolerant. She meant she had a hard time working with people who were different. She meant she had little respect for the individual. And she thought I was just like her. I disagreed with her and I told her so. And I thought the whole matter was done with until I found myself in HR having to explain my part of the conversation. I would not change my mind, but I left that meeting with a clear understanding. At Capital Group, we do not discuss anything so personal or possibly controversial because it is not professional. I'm still sitting on the sofa. They're still looking at me. Then I realized I needed to be the better dad. My daughter had just told me she is in a risk group now, a group of people that has a high rate of homelessness, joblessness, a suicide rate 9 times the national average. I'm a dad. Dads worry about the safety of their kids. Now I know how to respond. And I will always worry about the safety of both my kids. This just adds to it. And that's okay because that goes with the job of being a dad. I go back to work and I successfully dodge questions for a while. I change the subject. Every once in a while I do have to lie. And if I've lied to any of you out there, I do apologize. I was stuck. But honestly, I didn't like it. And it got to the point where I needed to tell someone. So I went back to HR. And I was going to tell them everything. And I was going to say, look, this is not affecting my job performance, but I'm here to tell you this is what it is. I owed it to my daughter. She had shown so much courage to come out. I owed it to her. So I go into HR, and I start to talk, and I find out Capital Group has a new job aid in the form of embracing diversity and inclusion. Capital Group had been good. It became better. It was now amazing. There were diverse groups forming in offices across the country. There's online dialogue happening. There's conversations in the office. I am so proud of my company for what they've done in just 9 years. By coincidence, I have a one-on-one session with my senior manager that same week. I go and I talk to her, and she says, hey, Doug, how are the kids? I said, well, Joanne, funny you should mention that. Let me tell you. So I explained about Nora, and her reaction was great. She said, you know, I'm glad she can finally just be herself. She must be so happy. And that's when it clicked, the word happy. My child was finally happy. And as a parent, isn't that what we really want, our kids to be healthy and happy? I could check that box. Whew. And our family was now complete. So here I am on the stage telling you, mystery solved. Did I become a better dad? In some ways, yes. I'd like more practice. I'll check back with you in 30 or 40 years. But this is what I know. I know that my proudest moment of being a dad, as far as Nora is concerned, has nothing to do with her artwork, has nothing to do with her accomplishments at her job. My proudest moment is getting to tell her something I should have said when I was sitting on that sofa during that dinner. And that's, Nora, I love you.